December 13th at 3:30, right? We all see that on the website. So it's still going to be that day in that time period. I'm going to, it'll be in the form of a take home. So you will be able to access the exam on December 13th at 3:30 on Brightspace. That's where you will see it. Along with, there will be 5 short essay style questions. And you will be able to complete those questions within the 3 hours. So next to each question, I will sort of indicate the amount of time that I think you should spend on each question. It's just, sometimes I find that helps students prioritize their time between questions. So I will indicate, so if you see, 30 minutes next to question 1, that's me telling you it shouldn't really take you longer than 30 minutes to answer it if you have studied and done the prep. Now, it might take others longer, but generally speaking, if you've studied and done the prep, that is the general amount of time I think that it should take to complete the answer, okay? So definitely don't leave it until the 3 hour, don't leave your studying until last minute just because it's a take home. You will want to prepare in advance so that you're opening up the questions and you're just ready to answer them, right? And so when I say short essay, that means the questions require application, they require critical analysis, right? So you might want to describe or, define something when you're setting up your answer, but most of your marks will come from the analysis part, right? So for example, if your entire answer to a question is you just describing things that I can easily look up in my notes or in the material, you're not going to get very many marks for that because you're just repeating to me what I've lectured to you, right? What I want is you to give me something new. Obviously drawing on what I've taught in the course, but your analysis, right? So how you feel about it, what you think about it. And so your answers will be different, right? But they will all be based on credible support. So whenever you are making an argument, it has to be based in the material, right? So use the material to support your arguments, but the analysis is coming from, your thought process, how you interpret what we've been talking about. And so to an extent, like if it's on, a case, because remember, after the midterm, we've only covered stages 7, 8 of the 8-stage process. The majority of what we've been doing since the midterm are the case analysis, right? And so that's why I said early on, make sure everybody read the case, not only so that you can participate in the presentations, but because it's on the final exam, right? So you don't want to be reading all of those cases now. So I've said this from the very beginning. Hopefully you've been reading the cases as we go along, you've been engaging with the presentations, because you will just be that much further ahead in your studying, right? So in terms of the questions, I'm not asking, you're not going to be expected to know names of people, nitty-gritty details of the cases, more high level, right? What was going on, what were the challenges, what were the main issues, how did it relate to the course material? And so every case has a theme, right? Every case had sort of something major about it, or I guess something unique about it that that would have been discussed or that would have been addressed. And so if I'm asking a question about it, that's something you probably would want to know, right? So what is it about each case that made it unique? What was the big picture? What was really happening in these cases? How do they relate to the course material? So the questions are going to fall somewhere on those types of, in those types of areas, okay? So stages 7 and 8, and then any of the cases, and how they connect to the course material from the entire course. So if you're asked a question that focuses on the case, the material can come from any part of the course, right? Because it's specific to that case. So really, you want to have a good understanding and overview of what we've been talking about in this class, and then specifically how it might be relevant in the cases that we discussed. So you're only, the only cases there's been a few, but you're only responsible for what we've talked about in class. So the GlaxoSmithKline case, right? Broadway Brokers,
Yingskip
and Yang Search. I'll tell you right now, don't worry about that one. You already had your vision exercise on that. So that's not going to focus, my questions aren't going to focus on that case. So if that helps you sort of streamline some of your studying, that case we've confined to the class exercise. And then all of the cases that we had during presentation. So British Airways, Marconi, Motorola, Seagram, and Change. It's 5 cases that we had in presentations, and then we had Broadway Brokers and GlaxoSmithKline, which we discussed together. Okay, so, now if you've been present to all of those classes, if you've engaged, really you should be, ahead in terms of preparing, because we have talked about them in quite some detail, right? I know I've emphasized, even after some of the presentations, what I thought were major points to bring up in those cases. And so when a course has a 20% participation component, when you've really been, embracing that 20%, you will benefit on the final exam, okay? And I think you should, because you should be rewarded for coming to class, for contributing, and for making our discussions rich, and that's what will, I think, help you if you really embrace that, okay? Not to say that if you haven't participated, you won't do well, it's just gonna be more of a challenge because you haven't engaged with the material and you haven't come to class. If that's been, your circumstances, you're just gonna have to do more work at this point. And so I think it, again, because participation, it asks of you a lot, it asks you to get out of your comfort zone, it asks you to put your thoughts and opinions there. So that's what we're doing here, right? And I want you to know that you're valued and appreciated for doing that, because my lectures aren't what they are without your engagement and participation. So I do appreciate that, and this class has done quite well overall in terms of engagement. You've had some great class discussions following the presentations. And so that's very much appreciated. And I think you'll see how those discussions and engaging in those discussions will help you in the final exam. Any questions on that? So that's the exam. Okay, so 3 hours. You will have to upload your completed exam.
Exams.
So 3:30, you will see it. 6:30 is the time by which you will need to upload it on Brightspace. Okay? In a Word document. Right, just upload it in a Word document. Yes?
So that means, like, we'll see the question and then work on it on maybe a Word document and then upload on to Brightspace. That's how it's gonna be.
Sorry, just, can you just talking?
So we're gonna do the exams on a Word document.
Yeah,
And then upload.
upload it, yes.
Oh.
Yep, so you're gonna see the questions on Brightspace. You don't have to repeat the questions in your
Okay.
Word document, right? You can just do question one, and that saves you time from writing up the question again, right? Just question one, and I'll be able to refer.
Okay.
And then answer all 5 questions, and then submit the completed document back up to Brightspace. You'll see it under the assignment tab.
Is there like a word limit to the answer?
I will put a word limit, keep it within a page, I'll tell you now, keep it within a page type, 12-point font, right? So the standard 12-point font, Times New Roman or Arial is fine. Try to keep it within, Arial tends to be a little bit bigger, so stick it to Times New Roman. About a page and a half, single space, right, at most, for each answer.
And also,
And remember, it's not about how much you write, it's about the quality of what you're
Quality of
writing.
the
So if you
arguments.
feel, I can see an answer in 3/4 of a page that will earn a higher grade than an answer for the same question that's a page and a half long. Okay, so it's about what, how much time are you focusing on analysis? Like, that's what you should use as your guide to whether you're earning enough marks. When you read your answer, ask yourself, have I spent most of my time describing things? If the answer is yes, you're not done writing, right? You want to maybe streamline or make the description part more concise, and then bolster the analysis part. Okay, so if you're reading back your answer to yourself and you're like, this is a lot of my analysis, drawing on the material, describing it where it's necessary to support my answer, but really this is my analysis, that's going to be where your marks come from, okay? And I say this all the time to all of my classes, really, because there's, similar types of way. All of my exams, even in law classes, right, you're still approaching questions in the same way, where you can answer a question being very, very descriptive, or you can answer it doing what you're supposed to do and providing more of your analysis and focusing less on just describing things, right? That's what you're here to get from the critical analysis. It's easy to just reiterate something to me at a master's level. I don't really need to know that you memorize things and reiterate. That's not what I'm testing. That's not what's going to help you in the world. It's your critical analysis, your ability to look at what we've talked about and apply it, and actually put your own analysis, using your own experience, your own background, your own knowledge to inform your answer, obviously within the confines of the course material, right? Okay, any other questions? Yes?
Like, can we exceed the page limit like maybe 2 pages?
The page limit, I wouldn't go over, for each question, I would try to keep it within a page. If it's a little bit over, that's fine, but I don't want 2 pages per question.
What page for each question?
Single space,
Oh,
as a guide, right? If it's a little bit less, a little bit over, that's fine, but like, there's 5 questions, right? You want your answers to be really refined, okay? If you're just describing, you can write a 5-page answer, but that's why I want to really help you keep the description stuff concise, and then just give me some substance, give me the analysis. And support, right, support your argument. So if you are giving a position on something, you need to support it. Why are you taking that position? What in the course material, what in the case justifies your position, right? And of course, right, it's all to be done individually. Nobody should be talking or communicating during the exam. If answers look too similar, I'm sort of getting stricter in my approach to similar answers. So if I see, and I can tell, right, so I can tell I have it almost every semester in some course, where answers between 2 students are too similar, I'm going to assume there was copying, and you will get 0, okay? Now, when I say similar, I mean to a point where it's just highly unlikely that there was no collusion, right? Because again, there's just no 2 answers are going to be worded in the way that I've seen, and I've had students, swear to me that it was done, individually, but the odds are just too unlikely, and so I will have to give benefit to that in fairness, of our policies on plagiarism, right? And we can't police, obviously, we can't monitor when, you're writing an exam at home, so that's sort of what we use to guide us. And then, so just save yourself the headache. Don't even, go down that road. Just don't talk to anybody while you're writing the exam. Write it on your own, not with anyone else in the room. And that's it. Okay, so don't talk to anybody during that 3-hour period. Want to talk about it after? Go ahead. Just don't talk about it during that 3 hours. Okay, and certainly don't collude on answers or anything like that. Any other questions?
So the question is result posted,
The exam questions will be posted on December 13th at 3:30. That's the exam date in the system.
Yeah.
So that's just like you would be in person, except you'll see it when on the computer, on Brightspace. Okay, so within 3 hours, you're uploading it, but there's a lot that you can do beforehand to prepare, right? There's a lot that you can do in terms of your prep, such that when that exam is released, you're just writing and answering, right? Because you've got all of your prep work. You know the cases that are going to be examined. You know the material that's going to be examined, right? So there's only so much you can have to work with, right? And so we're not, nothing outside of what we've talked about is going to be on the exam. So you can prepare in a way where you're really, efficiently answering those questions, and you're not doing all that prep work at the same time, losing time from the actual writing and the analysis. Okay, so be very strategic. When students are really prepared for take-home exams, they tend to do much, much better because they use the writing time for writing, right? And I think sometimes we think, oh, because it's take-home, I can just sort of do it all at the last minute. That's not the right strategy, right? Any other questions on the final exam, or really anything at all? Yes.
Do we submit Word document or? PDF?
Word document, yep. I will be available, accessible during that 3-hour period, right? So if you need to email me with a question, I'll be able to get back to you right away. If there's a tech issue, right, you have to let me know as soon as possible. Do prepare, because we don't know what happens with the computer, right? So I'll put a note on this as well in my announcements when I give the instructions online. But prepare to if your computer breaks down or something happens where you lose connection, prepare to have a pen and a paper next to you so that you can complete the exam in handwriting, because you're not going to get another day to complete it. So if your computer shuts down, be prepared to transition to finishing it by hand, and then we'll find a way for you to scan or take a picture of that and just submit it in addition to the online version, okay? So don't sort of sit there and think, I can just write it tomorrow. No, the instructions are going to be very clear you have to be prepared to, you know, if your computer shuts down, or if you've got a tech issue, you're switching to writing it in hand, and then you'll either scan it or take a picture of it and send it, upload it with your whatever you completed online, if you can access that. Okay? So do prepare to have something by your side, where if you gotta make that switch, you're ready. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is it only 5 short essay questions?
Yeah, just 5 short essay questions, no multiple choice, nothing.
Can you give us a clue on how the questions will come?
So not much different from the midterm, just a little bit more involved. So the midterm questions, again, like if I'm asking you about a case, right? That case might have focused on a particular topic, right? Something about that, you know, what was the center of that case. So I might ask you your opinion on that topic, like, you know, define what this means to you. And then I might, so you'll see it's not just gonna be one question, that's it. It's going to be, each question will be on one area, but there will be multiple questions that sort of connect to each other, right? So I'm really helping take you to answer your question by telling you, you know, you'll see, okay, I have to answer this, then I have to address this. So it's gonna be very detailed so that you know everything that needs to be addressed in that question, right? In other words, it's not so vague that you're just like writing blindly on like, you know, a very vague question. There will be multiple questions, but all related to the same thing. And that way, you know, you wanna prioritize how that gets addressed in the writing. But kind of like what, you know, what you would have seen on the midterm, just a little bit more involved. And most of them will have some connection to the case, if not all. To 18. So it's up to you if you want to share your slides with each other. If you would like me to post your slides for the class, you can email them to me and I'll post them. That's not, I'm not gonna enforce that. I'm not going to make a requirement for students to allow that, because that's your work, that's your presentation. You don't have to make it available to everybody if you don't want to. If you want to, that's fine. So if you want to make your group PowerPoint available, send it to me. Say I'm okay if you post this for the class, and I'll do it, but I have to hear directly from that group. And also, I do caution you, if you do review other groups' slides, do not rely on that for your study. You don't know that they've interpreted it correctly. You don't know that, well, you just don't know, right? You have to read
We have
the
to
case
do
for
our
yourself.
own
Everybody did a
verification.
great job on the presentations, but that doesn't mean that you should be using their material to form your opinion, right? You know, I heard great feedback from the audience. I heard great perspectives from the groups. But again, so you can use it as a guide, right? Maybe it's helpful because it helps you summarize the facts, or it helps you remind you of what really happened, which, you know, for the most part, everybody was, you know, understanding what was going on in the cases. But be very careful that you're not using that instead of reading the cases, because you might be relying on something that's not going to get you the marks that you want. Okay, so read the case yourself.
Are the questions going to be similar to the case questions we gave?
Not like exactly, right? But it's like the case questions were meant to help you really understand the case. So that will help you answer the exam questions, because you've just understood the challenges in the case, right? If you've read them, if you've applied those questions, but they won't be exactly the same. Think about, it'll be more centered on the course material in some way, right? So like you'll see the theme, you'll see sort of the connection to between the cases and some material concept in the course. Any questions? Exciting, right?
Yes.
Well, let's go happy. There's smiles, that makes me happy.
Which one presentation you uploaded on Facebook?
Pardon?
The
Right?
grade for the presentation was.
Sorry.
The grades for the
Oh,
presentation.
You know, the grades, I will be sending that to you, since we don't have a team today, I thought we had another team left. Yeah, I'll get that to you this weekend, okay? So each team will be emailed a copy of their feedback. I guess I could post it on Brightspace, but then it's gonna be, I think it's just because to email you all. So I will email you, probably through Brightspace, but everyone should get an individual email.
Okay.
Or sorry, your team will be emailed as a team, and every member of that team will have a copy of their
That
feedback
feedback.
as a team. right? So you approved your grades as a team. Assuming there were no issues with contributions in that team where grades have to change, that's the whole point of the team member evaluation, right?
Yeah.
To let me know that that's something that it's worthy of consideration. But I will do my best to get those to you this weekend, okay? You'll have a mark out of 30. And then your team member evaluation, I do ask that the sooner you submit that, I did say the end of class, which would have been Tuesday, but I'm gonna ask you to try and submit it to me by tomorrow, so that way you'll be in a position to calculate exactly where you're at before the final exam. Remember, the finals were 25%, right? So if you get the team member evaluations to me, then now, you know, the mark that you will be able to access is a mark based on having everything so far completed. You'll be able to determine where you're at in the course out of 75%.
Sure.
Sorry, there was a question. Yeah.
Yeah, Professor, I think we usually receive marks for one group with,
So the group work, if you submitted it as a team, the person who submitted it, if your name was on that group document, which I asked, you will get the mark. It might not show up on Brightspace, but I have it in my records, right? So as long as your name was on there, you've gotten the credit. Okay? You will see eventually though, like you'll be able to tell if it's missing and just let me know if there was an error, if your name wasn't on it, but you did work on it. But the way that you verify is look up that what was submitted, make sure your name is on it, and you will have credit. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, well, it was a pleasure to have you in the course. I really enjoyed teaching this class. I hope you took away what I was hoping you would take away from it. There's a number of key things. Difference between leadership and management. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget our discussion about leadership, right? The whole commitment to personal discovery. You want to be leaders. If that's your goal, just remember it starts with you. Right? And so every day should be really, you should be not sort of neglecting to commit to yourself, to knowing yourself and to, becoming the most authentic version of yourself. And then, that whole process will make you a better leader. It will make you in a better position to influence others in the way that you want. And people will want to be around you. They'll want to learn from you. And that's sort of, isn't that, what we're all doing here in some way? Okay. So it's been a pleasure to, have you throughout the term. For those of you for anyone who's not here, when you talk to them, extend them my best wishes as well. And you will still hear from me through announcements. I'll still be around Odette. If you ever have questions or need advice, I'm around. You have my email. Don't hesitate to reach out. Right? This is what I love to do. So if I can ever help you in your career journeys or, if you just have, questions or want to talk, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay? Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Good luck on your studying. You'll all do great. Don't stress.